test. So when designing or when writing our test, we should pay attention to the organization of the items and how they are going to be planned and given in a layout. This is why we should also pay attention to the format and the layout. Format and layout refer to the way in which your test is going to appear. Now, generally, we hear about tests in a form of pen and paper, like they exist in papers, and people are tested in there for their written competencies. However, they can also exist in a computer, as they can ask for a practical thing or a pictorial thing or a presentative thing and so forth. So we should pay attention to the mode where it will be writing or speaking or any other mode. Now, the arrangement of the instructions. Instructions, that is, when you ask the questions, your instructions should be good in length, clear, and well ordered. I have talked already about clarity, that everything or your questions should be well presented, and they should be humble in their length, not to provide people with a longer question so they do not know what to do. And you should also mention your scoring, for what reason you are testing them and what's the score behind each item. And by scoring, we mean the weight of each item. If it is simple, it should have a humble scoring. If it is, let's say, quite difficult and needs effort to answer, the score should be equal to that. Scores can also not only be marks and achievements, they can be certificates, as we do for language learning and so forth. Now, the fifth thing, that is, after developing your test, after including the items, after structuring your test and ordering it and taking into consideration the things that you are going to evaluate, now we are going to pilot the test. In piloting, if you remember that we have referred to it in questionnaires and interviews and for the checklist and for schedules. So piloting is very important for anything, not only in research methodology, but whatever thing we are writing, we are doing. It is good to have or to give it to someone, especially those who are specialists or those who are interested in your topic or those who are knowledgeable about this. Give them your things to check them for checking. So piloting the test is also good. That is, you have taken your test, you have paid attention to the objectives, to your research questions, to the items that you are going to test, in which way you are going to present it or to give it, whether in a speaking form, whether in a written form, and so forth. Now, give this paper, after you write it down, give it for evaluation by others. Evaluation can be by your supervisor. Evaluation can be by a supervisor, by a teacher, by a friend, or by a group of, or taken from the sample itself, the sample population itself, which means if my sample includes around 20 people, I'm going to take only 2 or 3 to see the test. The different questions asked, whether they are clear or not, whether they are well structured or not, whether the language is fine or not, whether they are well presented or not, and whether the data that I am going to collect through tests are going to be reliable and valid or not. So piloting any research instrument is very beneficial and very crucial. Why? Because it helps you for the refinement of the structure, the way in which you organized your questions, the way in which you included the items tested, and so forth. The language of your test whether it is clear or not, whether it is ordered or not, whether it is understood or not, whether there can be some difficulties in the presentation. Are you presenting the topic in a good way? Sometimes we need other items, and it's the one who pilots the test or the one who pilots the research instrument that can tell us what to add, what to omit, what to modify, what to refine, and so forth. Like that, your research instrument is going to be more reliable and valid. By reliability, we mean that your research instrument is going to be trustworthy and the data gathered are going to be accurate. Like, you're going to trust the results of your or the results of your test, and like you depend on it. Not, for example, I give a very easy test to everyone, and then everyone is going to answer to that. Whether they are of an average level or medium level or advanced and so forth, everyone is going to answer. Is this type reliable? Is this type of testing reliable? Of course not. Why? Because first, it includes things that are not accurate or available for everyone, and then it did not go through piloting, because if you have piloted your test or your format and your layout, of course it was going to be criticized by the specialist or by somebody else. You see, so piloting is very important. Like, it will show you how you can make your data reliable, that is accurate and trustworthy, and you can depend on those data in the placement. Let's say we want to sit for a test in order to learn Spanish, for example, and the administration is going to make a test which is easy for everyone. That is, we will all have the A level and we will have the diploma from the starting day. So is this accurate? Is this reliable? No, it's not. This is why there must be a certain kind of, I said, difficulty of items and certain accuracy, so that your data are going to be reliable for later design and for later analysis of the data collected. Now, for validity, it refers to the logic behind your results, that is, whether they are logical or not. As I have said, if you give a test that is easy for everyone, the results are not logical. Why? Because it was easy, because it was at the hand of everyone, and like, you did not pay attention to anything behind. So like that, piloting can lead to the refinement of the test or the research instrument itself, as well as its reliability and validity for the data collected, and then for the analysis of your data. Now, tests for experimental research. Of course, testing are used for experimental research. How is that? I have said that before. Like, when we talk about experiments, we should talk about experimental groups or control groups, and we talk about cause and effects relationships. Now, experimental tests can be performed in two ways, where we should employ a pre-test and a post-test. We take a group and we first make or do a pre-test. Like, I take my class, and before starting my grammar lecture or linguistics lecture or any other lecture, I make them sit for a test in order to know their prerequisites, their abilities, their needs, their skills, and so forth. Now, I take the same group and I employ something on them, like a teaching method, through a given period of time, and then I test the effect of my teaching method on this group in this period by post-test, like a test that exists after the period of implementing a control or implementing an external variable. Let me illustrate this in an example. When I first entered university, it was in 2011, and we have set for a test. It was in written production. We used to call it WP, not like UQI. So it was called written production, and the teacher has asked us to write paragraphs about how we spend our holidays. So everyone in the classroom was starting to write ideas and expressions and love things in order just to show our level in English and to show our mastery of English and to show that we deserve to be here and so forth. She took the papers and she did not evaluate them. She did not give us our marks or averages and so forth. During the semester, we have been taught how to write paragraphs. That is, that there is an topic sentence, concluding sentence, and supporting sentences. That you have to include examples, illustrations, and you have to treat one idea in the paragraph, and so forth. Which is not a thing that we have done, actually, or some of us have done, some others did not. So, like this, the same exact group of subjects, of students, have been subject to a pre-test, that is before the implementation of the teaching method, and a post-test after the implementation of the teaching method. The same control groups with the same content, that is, we have asked about the same item, which is writing a paragraph, with the same difficulty, like you should respect the form of a paragraph, and we have been assessed, but our level have been assessed in if at the beginning we were assessed just our knowledge, our pre-knowledge and abilities were tested at the beginning. At the end, it was the added value was tested, and like that we can use tests for experimental research. That is, we have been under experimentation, and this has led the teacher to know the value added to our performance, in addition to the adequacy and let's say achievements of her teaching method, and whether we have acquired how to write a paragraph or not. Now we come to the advantages of tests. Of course, tests, as we have seen from the very beginning, that can be used in a considerable way. Like, if questionnaires are used to collect data about people's opinions, and interviews are used to collect data, let's say, about people's experiences and things alike. And observation is used to collect data about naturally occurring events and behaviors. Tests are reliable tools for measurement of difference, which means that by employing tests as research instruments, we are going to measure the difference between one group and another, the difference between one subject and another, the difference between one informant and another, one group and another, and so forth. So we measure, or we can measure, and it is very reliable to measure differences among subjects and differences among items. The second thing is that the tests allow the absence of researcher bias and interference. That is, if in the observation we interpret according to what we see and according to our personal interpretation, in questionnaires or in interviews, sometimes we guide. In questionnaires, there are guiding questions or leading questions that are so kind of multiple choice, and we want something that belongs or that confirms or disconfirms our hypothesis. For interviews, bias is so extreme that the researcher is present in a face-to-face conversation with the interviewee. In tests, the researcher bias is not allowed. Why? Because we just designed the test, and it is up to the subject to show their level or to show their knowledge and competence, because it is the knowledge, it is the ability, and it is the skill that has been subject to testing. And the third thing is that tests are very beneficial instruments for teachers and administrations. As I have said or mentioned the examples throughout the presentation, like tests allow teachers to know the levels of their students, whether the teaching method was adequate or not, whether a needed skill is still needed or not, whether the objectives have been achieved or not. For administration, tests help in collecting data about people's levels in order to design groups for them and design lectures for them, courses for them. And likewise, like any other research instruments, tests can also have some drawbacks, like sometimes we cannot measure things 100%, or our method of testing and measuring is not the right one. Like some items are forgotten, some items are exaggerated, and for example, when testing personality, we cannot really give a test or a restricted test in order to know whether these people are introvert or extrovert, though tests give a considerable amount of reliable data, but still they have a certain percentage of let's say effect, like people know they are under tests, and when we know that we are under testing procedure, we try to make a difference, and this one can be considered as a dismerit of testing. Like that, we come to the end of our lecture. Hope it's beneficial and well explained. If you still have some difficulties in understanding the usefulness of testing and tests as research instruments, never hesitate to contact me. So thank you very much for your kind attention, and see you in other opportunities, inshallah. Thank you.